Welcome to Swirl Radio. I'm Ayka, and I'm a militant mentor and founder.
My name is Terence Davy. I'm an executive coach focused on helping people unlock their leadership capacity.
And I'm Tealeda Nesbitt Porter. I'm a UX coach and founder of Savvy Bison Career Consulting.
I'm ԻníOlúwa Abíódún. I'm a growth product designer and also a co-host of the Growth Design podcast.
So today we are just going to dig into Ini's story and learn about how you got to where you got and why did you choose to go where you got to. You're always posting about growth design and you're just very vocal, and I love that about you, and I would love to hear what brought you that confidence, or were you always like that? Just tell us your full story and we'll come in with questions.
Awesome. I think I'd like to sum it up this way to begin with. If you'd told 16-year-old me sitting on the floor the night before my university exam, or rather, should I say 21-year-old me actually, right before my final exam in university, that I'd be, fast forward, at the time I was sketching dresses for a competition and just alternating between like sketching this dress and reading for my finals and all of that. If you told me then that I was going to end up as an IC designer working in growth at a big tech company, I probably would have laughed, because at that time I was not thinking about growth metrics or conversion funnels or whatever it is. I was thinking about craft, but in a different way. I was thinking about storytelling in a different way. I was thinking about how to create something that people actually wanted to experience. And that was what I put into that sketch, my heart. And I would say for me, in a way, it just encapsulates my entire journey. So I got into university at 15 to study law. And that meant the first 2 years of being in university was just confusion, to be honest. Because it's like typical African parents, like, what's your expectation about what you want to study? It has to be something reputable. How was I going to tell my father or mom at the time that I really wanted to go study fashion? That's just not going to track. So law was an option that, yes, I chose for myself, but it was also more or less like you look at all the options and, oh, you know what, I'll settle for this one because this is where I think my capacity, I've got capacity for. So first 2 years of law, mostly just coasting and trying to make sense of life. I was incredibly young. But then I found solace in a lot of like fashion sketches. I don't know if you're familiar with these really old comics, Archie.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, you are my people. So I remember that one of those cost about like 50 naira back then when I was in like high school, year one high school. And I would save up my lunch money, just like 10 naira each day of the week, so that by the end of the week I've got 50 and I could pick up a copy of Archie comics from the school. What did we call it? Like a kiosk of some sorts. Anyway, those comics made a world of difference for me because, one, they provided the perfect escape in trying to make sense of this new world I found myself in. But more importantly, I used to imagine that I was Veronica Lodge's personal designer. So much of my sketches were for her jet setting to Paris and jet setting to Milan and all of these places. And so you could not tell me nothing at the time. Like, anybody who cared to listen, I was going to own a haute couture atelier in Paris. That was the big dream for me. And everyone knew that about me. So, but how I was actually going to get started, I had no clue. But then there was a dress. A friend of mine saw one of my sketches and said, you know what, I would like to wear that to a faculty event. I'm like, I have zero sewing skills, so I don't know what you're on about. I just draw to make myself feel happy. But for some reason, she insisted. And so I was like, yeah, sure. We went fabric shopping together. We found a tailor. I monitored the whole process from start to finish. She wore this dress. And this dress went viral in real life. Suddenly, I had people coming up to me and asking for orders. Like, I had orders to fill. And so accidentally, I started a business. I was like, okay, this is fun. It's a perfect distraction from how dense my law studies were. And I sort of did that all through university, and gradually, with my mom's support, the business really grew. I remember my dad being out of the country on his sabbatical for about 3 years. And by the time he came back, the business had grown so much. I actually had like the first floor of a building that I co wasn't really owned, but like co-inhabited with another person. And it was too late for the whole talk that you can imagine was coming, which is like, oh, you have to shut this down and face your studies. I'm like, I've been doing it for 5 years, sir. There's nothing wrong with my studies at this point. It's too late. But then I think the pivotal moment came with this competition that I was talking about. I saw an advert online and decided, you know what? It's my last night in uni. I've got my final exam tomorrow and I'm free after 5 years of study. Might as well. So I created this sketch. I remember showing it to my roommate and she was supportive. She was like, yeah, try it. Sent it through and I forgot it existed for about 3 weeks until I got the call and it's like, oh, you've been shortlisted into the top 10 to actually make this dress. And the whole point of the competition was there's a Nigerian A-list actress called Dakare Akande, and she had taken a hiatus to like go have a family and all of that. So it was her debut back on the red carpet for the first time in a number of years. So she wanted to make a big deal of it and turned it into a competition, like dress me to this thing. And obviously being an A-lister, she pulled a lot of clout and a lot of attention. So I thought, you know what, this might be great for the business. And so for me, the process of actually curating this dress over 4 weeks, that's what I meant about like, it was about storytelling. It was the first dress. I mean, much of the dresses up until then were very much that. But this was the first dress that had so much intention. I remember just like really spreading the skirt out on my living room floor. My brother helped bead, my mom helped bead, my younger sister helped bead. We in total arranged about 20,000 sand beads. They were really, really tiny, so it was haute couture work over those 4 weeks. And there were like so many petals that came from another fabric that I painstakingly cut over 4,000 of those petals and then we'd attach to this tulle skirt. It was a whole big deal. And I just remember finally making it to top 3 and then getting into the hotel. I actually have a picture online, floating around online of me in the
Oh, we
hotel.
need to see this picture for sure.
Yeah,
We
I
need
will
to.
share. I will share. And I was like still hand stitching furiously. And the other two contestants with their finished dresses just sat across me, looking at me like, what's this child doing? Because I was 21, really young. Like, what are you doing? They were professionals, being in the industry for a number of years. And I remember the organizer coming out and just saying, hey, so Dakore is picking the dress she's going to wear out of the 3, and she's going to wear Folu Ajayi's dress. So at the time, I went with a different name because being a lawyer back home, you cannot be famous for anything outside of law because it creates an undue advantage for your legal practice. So I used a different name completely for fashion and then had my government name for law and all of that. But yeah, so she came out and she was like, Folu Ajayi's dress. And I did not
So
hear
you won the competition.
basically, I didn't hear her
Love
because I was
this.
still like hand
I
stitching so
love
quick.
it.
That's nuts.
And she said it like 2, 3 times before I was like, oh my goodness, wait, what? And then
Wait, so you
furious.
won, but you hadn't even finished the dress.
There was
That's
still
amazing.
there was still
I
a few
love that.
bits and
I love
things
that. I
left.
love that so much.
But yeah, so she wore this dress. We finished it up, went to the red carpet, and I was just holding my breath because I knew the minute that dress hits the internet, that was the beginning of it. And true enough, once it got shared, there is a huge Nigerian platform called Bella Niger, and they've got monopoly of the market, to be honest, for anything celebrity news and stuff. And as soon as they shared it, my account blew up completely. And from there, it was just a spiral that we dealt with for the next like weeks completely. And the orders began. And I remember making a decision right there and there and saying, I need to pivot my business. We are done just making bespoke stuff. It has to be wedding gowns because of how much attention to detail went into this piece. Wedding gowns were the only kind of occasion that I could bring that level of storytelling to life. And that was it. That was the beginning of it all, honestly. And I went on to just really grow the business. I learned a lot about being a founder, being an entrepreneur. Did that in total for about 8 years, plus the years I was in school. Moved on from fashion, moved to South Africa with my husband. And because my status as a lawyer was not recognized by the South African government, it was basically go back to school. I'm like, that's 7 years of my life. Absolutely not. I chose to go to a fashion school, still very much holding on to my fashion dreams. And in my second year, I got pregnant and eventually just decided, you know what, I was going to take a beat from fashion school. And I think that was the beginning of starting to ask myself, like, okay, I have a lot of, like, I'm multi-passionate about a lot of things. How do I begin to reconcile being pulled in different directions and make sense of all of this? And eventually I made the decision, very painful decision, but I was like, I think it's time to let go of fashion. It served its purpose at that period, but not anymore. It's not what I see for the future. And I remember a lot of people not understanding it because it's like, what? That is all you've ever voiced that you wanted? But I needed to move on from that. So ultimately, I moved into design because my side hustle actually had a side hustle, even all through those years. It made sense as a pivot once we pivoted into wedding gowns to also have wedding invitations as well. So I'd been illustrating for wedding invitations and found my way into graphics design that way. And in fashion school, I really got a deep sense because we spent 1 year in Illustrator, the next in Photoshop and all of that. So I began to explore the marketing side of things, right? And so it was a natural progression into brand and marketing design. Eventually moved to London, went in-house as a senior brand designer, got really in-depth into leading a global rebrand. And from there, found growth design. And for me, growth felt like coming home. That's the best way to describe it.
So wait, can I just pause you for 1 second? Because you said a lot, and I feel like we need to unpack it before you get into growth design.
Okay.
So first, tell us what your name means. Because I love when people like, my name means nothing. I mean, it doesn't have a meaning. People always ask me, so I'm always like interested in what other people's names mean. So let's start with like, what does your name mean? I know you said you grew up in Nigeria, so
Yeah.
Igbo or
Yoruba. I am
Yoruba.
Yoruba.
Okay,
Yes, I'm
cool.
Yoruba. Okay, so I'll preface it by saying for Yorubas, a lot of Yoruba names have Oluwa. So you'd see like Oluwa Damilola, or in my case, ԻníOlúwa. So it can be in front, in the middle, behind. Oluwa basically means God. And then there is something else attached to it. So for me, it's ԻníOlúwa, which means God's heritage or God's inheritance or God's own, basically.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So Niger girl
That
started out drawing as a way to not do law because it sounds like I have like African friends and they're all like, yep, no, it's either law, medicine, engineering. Like
Engineering.
parents
Yes.
don't want you to do anything other than those three because those are guaranteed to
Yeah.
make money, which makes sense.
Yeah.
So your side hustle turned into you creating this awesome dress for a famous actress. Then you got married. Then you moved to South Africa, and it sounds like South Africa is where things started to change, right?
Yes.
Cool. So then what brought you to the UK?
Okay, so my husband got a role here and
Mhm.
it absolutely made sense for his career, and also just looking at it for me, I thought like London being quite a central hub for design, it just felt like okay, yeah, it was going to benefit us both, so let's do it.
As you're like sketching, then you're getting more into graphic design. And so then where did the growth design come from? Because like it totally makes sense, right? Like marketing, creating invitations, all of that. But then like now we're doing growth design? Like,
can you also
Mhm.
explain a little bit about what growth design is?
Okay.
Because I'm not sure if everybody knows.
Okay, so growth design is actually quite broad. There is the marketing aspect to it, and then there is the product part of it. On the marketing side, you can have brand designers who do growth work. So that's where you find things like optimization of adverts, SEO understanding. So I did a lot of that work, which is actually how I got into growth. So I did a lot of it on the marketing side with the rebrand. I was monitoring the data across our landing pages. I'm going through the top of funnel and just understanding, all right, where are we seeing the dips? How can we improve it? I would go into Mixpanel to pull all of the information, like from the beginning, from awareness up until sign up. What does that entire journey look like? Where are we seeing dips? How can we optimize for it to be better? But then because it was a startup as well, I was also creating. Oftentimes, growth designers, we look at things that exist and then improve or create from there. So it's not like you're not doing any creation work really, but it's more, it's a whole lot of optimization and filling in the gaps based on data, talking to customers and things like that. So yeah, so on the marketing side, I was designing adverts, I was talking to ad agencies, understanding all of those bits, the funnel, strictly that. But then now I'm now on the product side of it, which also starts from the website. When someone's seen an ad, they land on the website. What does that experience look like? Do they get the right? What does the entire journey look like? It could be, so for example, a project I'm just wrapping up is just looking at our contact sales flow, for example. You'd think something as easy as contact sales shouldn't be too much of a project, but it then turns out to be, because you're monitoring every single screen and understanding where we're seeing the dips, why are people exiting the forms entirely, how can we optimize these forms, what are the different trust signals we could introduce into this to help them, or are you just trying to keep it completely plain so people focus on it? And then you go into the product itself, then you start thinking about monetization, you think about retention strategies. How do we price this? How can we improve our pricing model? How are we thinking about how we acquire, retain, and then get customers back into the funnel? So you're thinking about referrals, you're thinking about cancellation. How do we ensure that even if they're leaving us for good, it's still a good experience? So yeah, that's high level what growth design is.
As I said, so growth design, sort of in a nutshell, is like you thinking about how to expand a business, literally how to grow the business and all of the
Yes.
things that go into that,
Yeah.
including marketing, advertising,
Yes.
brand strategy, and
Yeah.
on top of that, product design. So that sounds like a lot, to be honest.
It is. It is.
And you mentioned top of the funnel and sales. And I don't want people who are not like, into marketing to not quite understand that. So what
Mm.
exactly is like the funnel and what's top of funnel, what's bottom of funnel?
Okay. All right. So top of funnel is mostly your acquisition strategy, your go-to-market motions and things like that. So it's things around, for example, from the minute someone gains awareness about your brand, could it be like a social media post or an advert or something, Facebook ad, whatever the case is. It's from there. Okay. I would say at its core, design is about behavior change. That's what it is at its core, right? So you're trying to interrupt, to use that word, someone's current pathway and then helping them reorient themselves into thinking differently about something that already exists. So basically, you're going through top of funnel, which is like the acquisition. Like I said, you've seen the adverts, you click on it, it takes you to an optimized landing page. You go through the landing page, you make a decision. Depending on your intent level, you might not. Sometimes growth design is also not just like designing for immediate action. Sometimes it's just priming them for
The
future
long
action.
game. Hmm.
Exactly, right. So they might click off your landing page and not be ready to buy. But just in case they are, they go from the landing page, they land into one of the flows. Is it a sign up flow? Are they learning more about the business? Something that could up that level of awareness and intent for them to then start the journey. So once they get into the sign up flow, you're starting to move gradually from top of funnel and into the product. Now, bottom of funnel is when they're already in the product. So or middle funnel, let's start with that, is when they're already in the product. So what does their onboarding look like? Now that they're in the product, what is their experience for their first 30 days, for example? At what point do they activate? Activation being when they become a customer and you know that they're not going to churn, right? And from that point on, how do you retain them? How do you make sure they renew with you? They keep coming back. And how did you then turn them into super ambassadors of the brand, which is now bottom of funnel, by ensuring that they become the ones referring other people, referring your products to other people, and that loop starts again.
I love that. Literally, it like when I worked in ad sales, we literally would have like a funnel as a picture and show like the wide opening is like awareness, like you know
Yeah.
nothing about the product. You're just like, I don't know, a human being. You're like, I don't know if I want Pepsi or Coke, right? I just know I want a soda. And then as you go down the rabbit hole or go down the funnel, slowly you're deciding, yep, I'm a Coke girl. And then finally, I don't know, you go to the grocery store and bottom of the funnel is you buying like a 12 pack of Coke. Like that's how I sort of like to think about it. And then, as you mentioned, repeating customers and getting everybody else to go in. But like it really starts with the awareness, top of funnel, and then bottom of funnel is you're a customer, you purchased something.
This is all really fascinating, and I know you kind of speed it through your business as making gowns and business as a clothing designer. Uh, I want to learn a little bit more. Like, what are some of the skills and learnings you had as an entrepreneur that have empowered you to be a successful growth designer?
Oh, that is so good. Okay. I'm not going to just mention entrepreneurship because I feel like law is also much a huge part of my story. I would start from law and say law taught me structure and logic. In those days when I had a law class and I had customer deliveries, and I used to hand deliver every single one of them because I was a one woman show, right? In those days, I had to figure out how to be very structured because I needed to study for class as well. I can't be caught sleeping with school. So it's more or less, what does my schedule look like? Oh, and this is someone who is like extremely ADHD, okay? So, right, law gave me that structure and logic in thinking through systems and creating systems that worked for me. Fashion taught me craft and storytelling. Entrepreneurship taught me scrappiness and customer obsession completely. And then brand design took me back to systems thinking again, but now in the realm of design. And then growth design, I would say, gave me permission with experimentation and then defining what clarity means to me. So that's the way yeah,
So you're applying all of these lessons in your day-to-day job now. You're still really
absolutely.
connected to those stories.
I,
Absolutely. Yeah.
oh, I wanted to bridge back to Toledo's question about how you switched from graphic design to growth design. Like what led you to that?
Yeah. I will take that and then link it to like the what you said, Terence, with like using it in my day-to-day life. So when I joined the startup as a senior brand designer, my big project was, hey, we're gonna rebrand the company. That's why you've been hired. Do this for us, right? And this was a company that provided like loans. It was like ethical loans to ensure people don't get into debt spiral and all of that. And a lot of it was also compliance work. My law background was very helpful in being able to deal with the financial conduct authority officials, right? I could interpret their compliance details and understand what are the limits that we can potentially push, but still stay very much within the side of the law, right? With those type of things. And I led the rebrand. We wrapped it up after 6 months ish. And at the end of it, my manager was actually super responsible for getting me into growth, honestly. Because she said to me in one conversation, and she was like, back then we lived not too far from each other. So we take like really long train rides back home together. And on one train ride, she said to me, like, the way your brain works, I've watched you connect things that on the outside doesn't make any sense. And you just somehow fit it all together. I think I have a book for you that might help you figure out what your next steps are. Because in terms of like career progression at the time, we were talking about me growing into a creative director. And at first I embraced it. And after a while, I felt like that's not really my dream anymore. but I don't know what it is, which was a weird place to be in career conversations because I did not know how to guide her. So it was just like, I just went along for the ride. She was so on the creative director thing, and I was like, okay, yeah, I don't like it, but okay, we'll keep going. And when she said this, I was so grateful to her because I'm like, yeah, let's read the book. And the book is like design driven. Is it data driven design or design driven? I can't remember the structure, but yeah, it was something along those lines. And in this book, she talked a lot about experimentation and running growth design. So, Terence, I can see you searching her name. Her name is Molly. So if you do design driven and then put Molly, I'm blanking out on her surname right now as well. It might come up. And so, yeah. So in her book, she talked a lot about, for example, she worked for the Labour Party in the UK and how they used design to win voters. And I was like, wait, what? That makes no sense. And she explained how they did a lot of like A/B testing, hypothesis driven design for how they won every single sort of like municipality they went to. And I was like, this is insane. And then she had so many case studies. She went from like just government level to NGO level to for profit to all sorts of things. And it just opened up like so much possibilities in my brain. And I said, this is it. This is where every single thing comes together for me. So I remember going back to my manager and saying, I want more. And she said, that's very good. And so she paid for the course. So they've got a community called Growth Designers Co., founded by that author as well. And I was part of the first cohort of their course. And throughout the course, I think I was just dumbstruck like the whole time. I was like dumbfounded. Like, what is going on? This is so insane. Like, I could understand it from the customer perspective, from the business, having run my own business. It made a lot of sense. And that deep empathy for, because, you know, like as designers, it's deep empathies for customers. But I think because I've run my own business, I could understand the need for the business to also be like, without the customers, the business doesn't exist and vice versa. So it's a symbiotic relationship, right? And when I was done, I just wrote her a note and said, my role has to change, please. I cannot be brand designer anymore. But I think what I appreciated about her is even though I said it was more in the name, by this time I was already running growth projects and I loved it. I'd wake up every Monday knowing I needed to go look at my data and see how my landing pages were performing. And I just had so much fun, like figuring out what could we tweak, how could we improve this, and just watching all of that, but also with the mindset of how do we make life better for our customers and things like that. So yeah, that's how I got into growth design, and it's been a journey since.
Real quick, the book is called Design Driven Growth by Molly Norris Walker.
Thank you.
And I will be reading that.
It's a good book.
Yeah, it sounds really awesome. I won't do it in this podcast because I'm sure people will get bored, but I want to geek out with you on customer data. That was my shit as well. Like, I oversaw customer success and support, and first thing I did every day was open up a dashboard and go, what do we do now?
That sounds like torture. That's like, for me, that's torture.
I didn't want to say it, but I'm like, I want to be friends with the people that are interested in the data, but no, looking at it every day. Oh my gosh, yeah. I just want you to tell me the numbers. That's all.
Yeah.
I think there's beauty in let's just go one step deeper quickly. There's beauty in opening up your spreadsheet and seeing a line that has been read for the past 3-4 weeks, and now execs are asking you what's going on. You finally see it turn green. It's just like, yes, at least we know what we did that was different. Or at least we know it's seasonality. So next time they ask me, like, it's just the season, leave it alone. It's going to get better. Right. So yeah, it's just good it's almost like one step further, understanding the real impact in, like, this is a real life from a business perspective of all of our design choices. We could very well thank the company if we're not careful with the way we make these choices. Yeah.
To like actually work on the business in like practical and pragmatic way.
Yeah.
You can actually run experiments because you'll get results from the experiments, and you know if something doesn't work, and it's not subjective. I mean,
Yeah.
one could argue that like choosing what
It can
metrics
be.
that you track
Yeah,
can be
exactly.
subjective, but yeah, it's like I get it. Like I love it. It's beautiful. It allows you to manage things at scale, and it allows you to actually grow
Yeah,
intentionally.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Sorry, I cut you off a bit there. I
Oh
was
no,
geeking
I was
out.
like, I was excited listening because usually you're kind of like, no offense, Terrence, like you're very kind of, and then like I just saw you light up. There's like a aura of happy around you. It's different. I've never seen that.
It's because it's rare to meet people that like both care about the data, but they care about it because of the impact that it has on people. And it's like you usually meet either or, like someone who's very customer forward, but has no idea why they're doing what they're doing, and some of the stuff they do doesn't work. Or you meet people that only want to look at the numbers and don't think about the impact that it has downstream.
I think it just helps to also just know that every single one of those numbers, there are real people behind it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if things are in the red, there are real people on the company side, which is you're looking at the CEO freaking out about LTV CAC and all sorts of things. And then there are real people from a customer perspective where it's like, are they not being able to access this product that we know is quite life changing for them? Or they're having serious frustrations that we need to dig into, investigate, and find out. Because if someone is not getting their loans on time, for example, the very thing we're saying, we're trying to make sure you are not going into debt spiral. Well, if they don't get the loans, they might go look for it with loan sharks and actually get into that debt spiral. So there's like real life consequences on both sides. I went from fintech to cybersecurity. So my
Oh,
last role in 2023, I was a principal product designer, still working in growth at Gen Digital, which is home to Norton Antivirus, Avast, and 8 other brands. And I basically just let growth work really top of funnel, so acquisition across like 58 markets. And that was really fun as well because it's the same thing. People getting frustrated with their cybersecurity products or buying our products and feeling like, wait, hang on a second. That's a bit of a dark pattern because I paid this amount and then my renewal price was at this. What happened? Right. So, really educating them in that regard. And now I'm now in AI customer service, which is an interesting one. So I'm at Intercom, and the whole point of it is, well, I mean, yeah, AI is the future. So the customer help desk being supported by AI agents and then a customer service AI agent. I mean, I feel like Zendesk, Salesforce, they've all got it now. Everyone's really digging into it. It's the year of the AI agent, is the way they're calling 2025. But yeah, my work now is more on the purchase team. And what I do on the purchase team is just making sure people can buy, understand, and renew, retain, cancel, upgrade, downgrade, all of those things. So I've now moved from top of funnel very much into bottom of funnel, middle to bottom of funnel. Yeah.
So it sounds like you're kind of living your dream. You get to live
Oh
that
yeah.
data life. So what's next though? Like what's next in the journey?
Ooh. Okay. So I actually started asking myself this question about 2 weeks ago. So spot on, Ayka. Spot on. I this is where my LinkedIn comes in because I've seen a lot of things in my experience working outside of Nigeria or South Africa, which is just a big void when it comes to women of color in design, first of all. And second of all, women of color in leadership positions where it ties to the first podcast episode we had, right? That talked about psychological safety and things like that, right? So, what's next is sort of something that will run concurrently as I figure out my bofu, which is basically how do I help more and more young female designers use communication to unlock not just their careers, but also their sense of self. because I think that's actually the starting point. I was talking to a young lady, I think it was last week, and it was completely heartbreaking that she's an introvert. And the first thing she said is, I just feel like I don't deserve to be in this space. And I had to stop her immediately to say, ma'am, did you go through an interview process? Yeah. Did you pass through every single stage? Because, like, design stages are wild, okay? If you went through all 11 rounds of design interviews and made it through, got an offer letter, and you're here, that is proof enough. Now, is this coming from you, or is this coming from people's opinions that have been shared with you about you being in a space? And it was more or less like the microaggressions and things like that, which we then, that's a whole different conversation. We talked into it, but I think just thinking about that experience and how it is far too common, and it's the big reason why I think female designers in the UK, female black or people of color designers in the UK are about 0.2 or some crazy stupid stats like that. And so it's a personal mission that for as many young black female designers that I meet and my path crosses and they're willing to engage, I'm making it my personal mission to really help them understand how to communicate first to themselves, but then beyond that, extend it into how they communicate to ensure that their career is something they choose and not something that happens to them.
You need to work with me at Savvy Bison. That is what I'm all about. I love this. Love it so much. Um, you mentioned like thinking about what's next for you, and this is part of it. But I wanted to go back to like what you're doing now in terms of AI and like how are you sort of thinking through that from a customer lens? And I ask because I'm sort of gotten to a point now where I'm like, I know if I call somewhere, I'm gonna get, some sort of an answering service. I know if I go online, it's gonna be a bot. And so like thinking through what that experience is for customers, it sounds like that's part of what you're doing. How are you differentiating your work and making it different in some way to be a little more user friendly?
Okay. On a high level, which is as the only level I can't speak of, to be fair, um, I think the vision that is being communicated in the market in general. So when they say it's the year of the AI agent, it's more the year that humans and agents work together to
Mhm.
figure this out. I don't believe, personal opinion now, not related to my company, but I do not believe that we are there yet in figuring out the mechanics of how these two things work together. I don't think we are not even close. And there is a real danger that we fast forward through, in spite of communicating and saying, this is our vision. There is a real danger of zooming through. And I say that because I subscribe to a number of AI newsletters, and there's one that I just had to take a screenshot of because of the way I laughed so hard. I don't know if you're familiar with this tech startup in San Francisco called, what is wrong with my brain tonight? I'm just gonna pull it up really quickly because I took a screenshot. Yes, Artisan. The headline
Oh.
says, "Stop hiring humans." That's been their entire ad all around the world. It's gone around now. But what was so ironical was the English, the irony.
Ironic. Yeah.
Thank you. Ironic. It's end of day. My brain's tired. Um, the irony with this title is, "Stop hiring humans, startup begins to hire humans."
Wait,
That's
say it again.
hilarious.
Startups stop hiring humans, but startup is hiring humans?
Exactly. So they ran an entire ad campaign on Stop Hiring Humans. However, now that they've raised $25 million, they are starting to hire humans to compete with other people in AI sales development rep business. And that's what I'm saying. There is a real danger that we zoom past and then we have to course correct. And it's just hilarious, right? So I'm not saying that everyone's getting it right, or nor am I reflecting on the work that I do in any way. But I'm just saying, on a general comment, I think we're still very much in the experimental age of these AI agents. Now, some companies are going about it in a batshit crazy way and just letting these things loose without properly understanding how that affects the humans that they're trying to
Right.
connect with. And I think it's just a bigger responsibility. Like, look, see, the one thing about the law is that it will forever be slow. I'm sorry. It doesn't catch up at the speed of innovation. It has never caught up with the speed of innovation. It will take longer, or if lawmakers suddenly wake up and decide to start moving quicker. But innovation always precedes law. That's the point, right? And what we will continue to see is companies testing different things out. It's almost like a toddler who tests the boundaries to see how much you can take before you then guide them and say, hey, these are the boundaries, right? But the more these companies test, and the more the law or our lawmakers or anyone who is supposed to be speaking up about these things, the more they are not there to guide and push back, the more leeway these companies begin to take, and the lack of responsibility to the humans they claim to serve. It's just a clear thing we're seeing in the industry, to be fair. So to answer your question, we're not there yet. So unfortunately, those bots gonna be answering calls for a while.
I agree with you 100%. I think the thing that people have been so afraid of, and they're, oh my God, the robots are taking over. And it's like, the robots aren't taking over if we don't let them. Like, AI is not taking over, but we've gotten to a place where we're using AI for things that we really don't need it for. Like, AI replacing humans creating art. Like, I don't know if I want AI to paint pictures for me. I still want humans to do that. I don't want that to replace my people.
I feel like even that, honestly, I got thoughts. Because let's be honest, it's only a certain demographic that are getting good pictures of this thing. I don't know
Right.
about you. If you've tried to turn your regular picture into LinkedIn profile, I'm like, who is that you're giving back to me? That doesn't look like me. What are you
It's
How
not
doing?
many
me.
fingers and toes are there?
What are you doing? Right? So and one this is another kind of worms that honestly I had to unfollow a lot of AI creators in the past year out of frustration. They fell into two buckets. And once again, this is where the lack of responsibility comes from. And I know that intention can be good, but unfortunately, action is what we see, right? Many of these creators, in creating black or representing black people, what I noticed is either the images of black people were paired with fantastical stuff, elements, where yes, you recognize that it's human, but then it's not, it's an object of insert whatever you want to insert behind it, as opposed to just being human. Now, there was the other side where it was almost like, okay, I, sir, do you have a fetish? Let's just call it what it is. Because the level of objectification, like, how are you okay generating and sharing? And for this particular creator that I'm referencing, honestly, I looked through almost 30 of their posts and it was that level of objectification. And I'm
Mm.
like, why? Like, I get it if you've got some, you really want to push the narrative on black skin and whatnot. Sir, this is not okay, because this is not the kind of slop we want in the world about black people, right? And so it's all of those fine nuances. You just see so much slop and nonsense being generated, and it's really frustrating. And at first I thought, you know what, I would use it to generate the kinds of images that I believe we should be seeing, and that are properly appropriately represented. But then I realized, like, see, the point of LLM, many LLMs have already been trained. The training has happened before you use it. So
LLM, large language models.
yeah. So the training is already done. Okay. So you generating and saying, oh, it's more because I want to diversify. No, the training is done. That data is just whatever your prompt is just
Being
helping.
regurgitated. Yeah.
Exactly. So I just when I came to that realization, I was like, you know what? It's also not my burden, to be honest, to try to educate. I'm finding more and more black creators who are talking about this, and I'm fully in support of it. I just think for me this is not where I want to camp myself, basically. But I just in general I really wish more and more creators using these tools will be intentional about, like, no one's saying you only have to create for the demographic that you belong to, but if you're going to create for other demographics, take a bit of time to just learn a bit more
And be
about
ethical about
nuance,
it.
exactly, before
Yeah.
generating things. So
The
yeah.
the challenge is you mentioned that innovation outpaces law. Innovation also strongly outpaces education. And so these tools are continuing to grow and they're going to continue on this super fast trajectory. But folks aren't learning how to find true intentionality, or they're not learning how to understand what's in alignment for them and what's in alignment for the people around them, or even their impact on the folks around them. And so uh,
Absolutely.
we have to work with the people. I think that's the
Yeah.
move.
You know, it's interesting. I resonate with so much of this, and it just scares me because I'm a huge advocate for creatives, and I think they need to. This is a time where you need to scream your name from the rooftops so nobody steals your work and steals your ideas. You need to tell your story. You need to show what nothing can. Nobody else can tell that story but you. I'm really excited. Next week we're gonna have Princella on the show who's gonna share her story, um, because you are valuable and AI will not take over your vision and your individuality. Um, I wanted to tell a story similar to your kind of, you were talking about the Stop Hiring Humans campaign. I had a similar sort of reaction to going to Adobe Max. No shade on Adobe Max, but you go in to the sort of the main hall and it was just projecting all of these AI images, and and they were all advocating. They were like, we're all about the artists, we're all about they're all, and there was this a little bit of a disconnect between the story they were telling about how they were supporting artists.
Because it's a conference for people and yet they're showing AI images.
Exactly. Exactly. And I really resonate with what you're saying, Inia, about the sort of taking culture and just saying, like, kind of spitting on it, being like not really appreciating the history behind it and just mixing it together and creating what you want with it. Like, that's really, in my mind, the most disrespectful thing you can do, because history is very personal and you can't just like take a piece of it. And like a lot of Target does that all the time. They take patterns from all these different countries and sell cups with those patterns, and nobody knows the history behind them. Nobody knows. So I definitely think that there's a problem that needs to be solved. And as you said, like, it's not a problem for you. It's so big. It's like, I don't know how it's going to be solved. I'm not sure.
Oh, but it is a
Yeah,
problem. And I,
it is.
I this is so not a question for you to answer, but maybe one to ponder. How do we ethically grow AI for good and not for, nefarious people stealing idea, stealing creativity, slothing?
Honestly, I have pondered on it, to be honest, like, for a long
I'm
time.
sure you have, yeah, yeah.
Where I'm at now is, how do we figure out? I mean, or I'm sure there are a lot of perhaps more intentional people who are working actively behind the scenes on these technologies that we don't know about, right? um I almost feel like I wish there was a way to amplify, to find and amplify those voices, because right now the biggest voices that we're hearing are the CEOs of these tools, right? Who are just going on about the way many CEOs run their businesses. And we might disagree with the ethics of it and how they're going about things, but I also know, like, many of those technology, it's the kind of things that you learn 10 years later and say, oh my God, there was a group of black men or women who were behind this technology and they were like the backbone of it. It's those type of things. And I was like, I wish there was a way to know those kinds of stories as they're happening, not necessarily much later down, because then through the amplification of their work, perhaps we can find a bit of hope for ourselves. It's slightly selfish, a bit of hope for ourselves to know that there are people who are thinking about, it's not even just black people, just people in general who are thinking about this the right way. And if there is a way because there's something that happens, if their work becomes public, perhaps it inspires the right kinds of people to then create the kinds of companies, knowing that, oh, it's not all the big companies that are in the space. There are core people behind the technologies, and understanding that tech in a respectful way can be helpful in creating the kinds of companies that we want to see. That's where I'm at. It's still a wish.
100%. I think, I hate museums. I feel like they're kind of like funeral homes for art sometimes. Like I like some museums, but there's a music museum in Nashville. It's called the National Museum of African American Music. And they have these screens where you touch a song and then it kind of shows like which songs they were inspired by. And it goes back to like it's crazy. So you see kind of, it goes back to blues. It goes, you know what I mean? You take a song that's written now, and that was just so impactful. I spent like an entire day in there. And I think that, I don't know if they used AI, but I think there's something that gave me a little hope with what technology could do with history, just experiencing that. But that was the only time. That was it.
Well, that's a cool example of using AI. They probably used AI for that. Yeah, seeing those cool examples and knowing that AI is still really new, and this is kind of the growth path for human technology, is like we go way too far and then we swing back a little bit. And I think through all of this, if we just keep the person in mind and help folks overcome like their imposter syndrome and help people elevate and amplify their story, like you're doing with this podcast and your business, Aya. Like just keep fighting the fight for the people.
You said like your future right now, your next kind of goal is to support young women of color. What are like three things that you would want them to walk away with, as far as like in terms of like how to communicate better?
Okay, get curious. I believe curiosity has driven every single pivot that I have done. Ask about how things work, why things matter. Like look for those little moments of clarity. I think that, and I say that because I say this because I've been there myself. I think that a lot of us we see this cubicle that we are given in the instance of joining a company, and we tend to get comfortable in just that cubicle without necessarily understanding that your little cubicle connects to the next and to the next and to the next, and together they all form the company. So understanding whom your success is dependent on and whose success is dependent on you. Understanding that really helps you begin to unlock how you think differently about your role, no matter how big or small it is within a company. And then I would also say that look for different ways of gamifying and experimenting with your experience within a company. It's one advice I always give to young women. It is a hard mental shift that needs to happen, especially in a place where you don't feel welcomed or wanted or things like that. But even inside the most painful current role, I believe there are still glimmers in between that could actually be you hanging on to the right one and figuring out what to do could help you unlock a different gateway. But I say that with the caveat, which is if it's truly a place that's not for you, please exit. It's not a hill to die on, right? So try first. And if you've tried everything and you think, you know what, this space is sinking me, then leave. I've done that as well. Which then brings me to the final part, leaving also comes with understanding that you need to treat your career like an experiment. It's a dangerous piece of advice, but that's what has worked for me. And that's basically, I test things, I iterate, and I learn publicly. Um, there is this quote from Warren Buffett, which is more about like when people tell him that they've learned from experience, he looks at them and says, but it's better to learn from other people's experience. And I think it's such valuable advice. And that's the way I approach mine, which is, hey, when it comes to career, for example, I look at people's LinkedIn profile a lot. Like I spend a lot of, I don't care if you see that I'm stalking you. Yeah, look at mine back. What's going to happen then? Um, I look at a lot of profiles and I just spend so much time in understanding, like looking through how people have moved from one company to the other. I look at their time frame and things like that. And I think one of the profiles that struck me recently and mentally gave me permission around the work that I'm doing was one person that I saw went from role to role, 4 months here, 6 months here, 4 months here, 8 months here, and then did 4 years. And I was like, okay, that is good to see, because I've now done like a year plus somewhere, and then I've done 8 months, and then I'm currently 4 months into my current role. I'm not trying to leave at the moment, but it's that thing where it's like, hang on a second, there is this mentality that yes, you can drop up, but don't do it too much because it still hurts you, right? But then what's the fun in that? That's the whole point of experiments. And the way, so I did the small startup, it was good. And when the going began to turn sour for me, I moved on without another job lined up. And then I thought to myself, I could stay in startup cycle, but what would I learn beyond just whatever the mission of the next company is? That was the big question. So for me, I thought, hey, I want to see how I thrive in a much larger organization. So I went into a company that was like over tens of thousands of employees. And I learned very quickly about myself that I get very frustrated if I'm trying to find one document and I'm being referred across different time zones and nobody has an answer for me. And I can't deal, right? So eventually, that wasn't the reason I left, but eventually I decided when it was time to move on, let's do so. And now I'm back in a slightly smaller, like 1,000 plus people. And for me, it's like whenever I do leave here, the next phase I would like to try out is mid. Because now I've done small. I was employee 68 in the first one. The next one I'll want to try out mid. Maybe like 200 to 300 people to 500 people. Let's see what that mix is like. And then finally, I already feel like my heart is saying where I will finally end up is like super early stage, and I really love it. But I think I will only love super early stage when I'm coming in at a much more senior role, as opposed to coming in as the hustle and grind in the beginning, right? So that is the way I look at things. Experiment and discover things. Like it's not about discovering what you like. It's actually the opposite I'm doing. I'm discovering what I do not like, because then I know not to repeat it. And along the way, I just enjoy the ride of all the things I like. I'm also making notes of that and trying to repeat that in the next experience. But ultimately, just test, learn, iterate, find out things about yourself, and just have fun.